In a city plunged into darkness, Belgorod has become a stark reminder of the devastation a single strike can unleash. Local social media is flooded with images of candlelit homes illuminating the pervasive blackness. At the same moment, Volodymyr Zelensky warns of an impending blackout in Ukraine, claiming that Russia is gearing up to strike again this autumn. Is this mere coincidence, or are we witnessing a reflection of a war where each blow receives a counterpunch, and every statement transforms into a weapon? As tensions rise, Ukraine and Hungary find themselves teetering on the edge of diplomatic collapse. This escalation arose from mirrored actions. Kyiv blacklisted 3 Hungarian officers in retaliation for Budapest's ban on Ukrainian military personnel allegedly involved in the death of an ethnic Hungarian during mobilization. For Hungary, it's a matter of honor, while for Ukraine, it's an opportunity to assert its voice. However, buried beneath diplomatic niceties lies a visceral animosity. Zelensky has publicly accused Hungary of conducting border surveillance using drones, which Budapest vehemently rebuts, calling the accusations absurd, branding the Ukrainian president as a ghost seer. Such diplomatic rhetoric cuts deep. But the escalation doesn't stop there. Hungarian state media, close to the government, published explosive claims that Ukraine is plotting provocations against Poland and Romania. Detailed scenarios suggest Ukrainian intelligence might deploy refurbished Russian drones to attack NATO member targets. Kyiv would then blame Moscow, demanding NATO's response. Moscow wasted no time in warning that such actions could lead directly to a Third World War, a dire message that reverberates through Europe. Experts increasingly emphasize that the issue isn't whether evidence exists, rather, the focus is on having a pretext. In the past few years, we've witnessed sanctions imposed before investigations concluded and allegations born purely from speculation. The logic appears to dictate, decisions first, proof later. Should there be any provocation, reactions could be instantaneous. The atmosphere is charged, and the future remains unpredictable as Europe seeks justification in every move, making the stakes ever higher as Belgorod stands vulnerable, and the specter of blackout looms menacingly over Ukraine. As shots echo in a distant conflict, can the world withstand the culmination of these tensions? What awaits as the stage is set for potential provocations? Each action reverberates, every word becomes another tool in the arsenal of war. As the front lines flicker with the possibility of escalation, the question remains, what will it take for the cycle of retaliation to cease, and can anything prevent the impending storm on the horizon? As the clock ticks louder, what will be the final toll of this unfolding drama? As war persists, ongoing conflict leads to alarming developments. Following a recent meeting with Putin, Lukashenko urges Zelensky to accept Kremlin conditions. Russia claims new territorial advances, launching airstrikes on supplies in the Kherson region, while Ukraine counters with drone attacks. Cities like Bryansk, Volgograd, and Chuvashia burn, mirroring a grim reality. Russia announces it has shot down dozens of drones, while Ukraine claims to have destroyed 100 of Russia's. The harsh truth reveals a drawn-out battle of attrition, where neither side appears weary of their resources. Meanwhile, the economic battlefield presents equally dire threats. The United States has surpassed 120% of GDP in national debt, while Europe seems headed down a similar harmful path. France and Italy are moving closer to Greece, and Germany is discarding its previous caution by ramping up borrowing. Warnings from the International Monetary Fund echo, servicing the staggering debts will soon become impossible without severe shocks. Should investor confidence in developed nations' bonds wane, a collapse could ensue, shattering the entire global financial infrastructure. This would lead to the downfall of banks, pension funds, and social programs. History shows that crises have previously struck swiftly. Just a few years back, the UK faced a similar turmoil when budget initiatives caused the bond market to collapse. The pound plummeted within days, forcing its prime minister to resign. Now the world faces the very real possibility that such a crisis could engulf the entire Western Bloc. The debt pyramid creates a global threat, and if it collapses, the fallout could be as disastrous as any war. These threads weave a chilling tapestry. Belgorod plunges into darkness as Ukraine warns of an impending blackout. Trump champions the Tomahawk missile as an unprecedented frontier, triggering alarm from Hungary over potential provocations. The front lines are ablaze, and the ticking debt bomb grows louder. The world teeters on the brink of a renewed escalation. One person's decision could alter the course of events. Today, Trump says no, but tomorrow he might say yes. If Ukraine receives Tomahawk missiles, it could mark the point of no return. The essential question remains, is the world ready to gamble and pave the way for a global escalation, or will this step lead to calamity? As the day unfolds in uncertainty, let the discussions flow, fueled by the ever-shifting tides of conflict. In the previous part, we explored a groundbreaking proposal that shifted control of Gaza from both Israel and Hamas to technocrats under international oversight. However, this revolutionary idea could ignite a political explosion, as ultra-right factions in Israel label it a capitulation. For these factions, the withdrawal of the army and any abandonment of annexation is seen as betrayal. Netanyahu knows that any stance could lead to a rift within his ranks. Agreeing to these measures risks losing his grip on power. Conversely, refusing to comply could shove him into a realm of international isolation, where every speech is met with signs proclaiming war criminal. Meanwhile, Hamas is also unprepared to lay down its arms officially. However, leaders are hinting at a willingness to consider temporary governance by technocrats, provided there's amnesty and humanitarian aid involved. This might splinter the group further, some may agree, while others retreat into resistance, perpetuating conflict. Thus, Trump's plan transforms from a potential route to peace into a new flashpoint of tension. For the U.S., it's a political trophy, for Israel, a risk to unity, and for Hamas, a threat of dissolution. As events unfold, Ukraine resurfaces, with President Zelensky asserting they have a lever that could alter the course of their conflict. His message is clear, they are eyeing Tomahawk cruise missiles. Currently, Ukraine's strike range is around 450 kilometers, while Tomahawks can hit targets up to 2,000 kilometers away, potentially striking Moscow, St. Petersburg, and industrial centers. This strategic weaponry has the power to change the rules of engagement. Trump is weighing three scenarios in response. The first involves freezing the conflict, solidifying the front lines, and halting long-range shipments. The second suggests a limited transfer, focusing attacks only on border regions of Russia. The most dangerous option is the third, a complete package of missile deliveries with permission to strike wherever necessary. Europe is not interested in finding proof, they are seeking justifications. Any assault could lead to fresh sanctions and escalating tensions. Lukashenko has already warned, if Ukraine acquires Tomahawks, retaliation against Kyiv will be inevitable. Meanwhile, the front continues to ignite. Day 1312 of the conflict witnesses Lukashenko, post-Putin meeting, urging Zelensky to accept Kremlin terms. Russia claims to capture populated areas, with airstrikes targeting warehouses and deployment sites in the Kherson region, while Ukraine retaliates with drones. Regions like Bryansk, Volgograd, and Chuvashia are ablaze with destruction, gas stations burning in the wake of a relentless war that remains drawn out, exposing both sides' unyielding capacity for prolonged battle. What if a single blackout could ignite a global conflict? As darkness enveloped Belgorod, its inhabitants clung to flickering candlelight, sharing the stark reality of their city on social media. Yet, amidst the shadows, Ukraine's provocative strikes raised urgent questions about retaliation. Could this spiral into a larger confrontation? A chilling announcement by President Zelensky hinted that Russia was preparing for a nationwide blackout in Ukraine. Was this just an idle threat or the precursor to another escalation? The diplomatic chess game intensified as Hungary found itself at odds with Ukraine, fueled by accusations and strategic missteps. The backlash began after Ukraine blacklisted 3 Hungarian officials, retaliating against Hungary's ban on Ukrainian military personnel. Tensions escalated as Zelensky accused Hungary of using drones for espionage, with Budapest vehemently denying the claims. Could these diplomatic faux pas lead to a breakdown in relations, further deepening the rift? In a twist, Hungarian media spotlighted allegations that Ukraine was planning provocations against its allies, Poland and Romania. Reports suggested Ukraine's secret operations might involve repurposed Russian drones targeting NATO installations. Listening closely, Moscow reacted, issuing grave warnings about the potential for catastrophe. This alarming narrative unfolded under the surface of diplomatic exchanges, exposing vulnerabilities in the alliance. Were these mere rumors, or was there a darker truth? Back in Belgium, discussions swirled around the growing tension. European leaders seemed all too ready to confirm any scenario that implicated Moscow, further complicating an already tangled web of accusations. Amidst these diplomatic games, Belgorod became ground zero for military retaliation, plunging the city into darkness. The streets fell silent, punctuated only by the soft lighting of candles. Observers noted eerie similarities between this attack and historical war chronicles, revealing a chilling intention behind the strikes, a calculated display of power. Each darkened street serves as a reminder of past conflicts, as Zelensky warned of an impending blackout, likening it to last year's assaults on Ukraine's energy grid. The mirror-like sequence of events, a strike followed by ominous threats, echoed throughout the media, amplifying the narrative. Words became weapons, every statement tinged with urgency. Meanwhile, the focus shifted to Donald Trump's controversial peace plan for Gaza, promising a revolutionary shift in regional power dynamics. With the potential withdrawal of Israeli forces and the embrace of technocratic oversight, the implications raised eyebrows worldwide. How would these plans reverberate throughout the volatile landscape? Critics in Israel condemned it as capitulation, fearing political turmoil as the region teetered on the edge of chaos. Would this new approach lead to peace, or herald further conflict in a shattered landscape? In the previous part, we delved into a revolutionary proposal to shift control of Gaza from Israel and Hamas to technocrats under international supervision. While this idea sparked hope, it also raised alarms of a potential political explosion, with right-wing factions in Israel denouncing it as capitulation. For these groups, withdrawing troops or abandoning annexation feels like betrayal. Netanyahu faces a perilous balancing act. Any decision could fracture his coalition. Agreeing to the plan risks diminishing his power, while refusal could lead him into a tight corner of global isolation, where accusations of being a war criminal loom large. On the other side, Hamas leaders display mixed signals. They hint at a willingness to collaborate if amnesty and humanitarian aid are included, yet many within the organization might prefer to resist, perpetuating the cycle of conflict. Thus, Trump's peace plan morphs into a new flashpoint, becoming a political trophy for the U.S., a divisive dilemma for Israel, and a potential threat to Hamas's existence itself. As attention turns back to Ukraine, President Zelensky boldly asserts that a strategic advantage is at hand, namely, the acquisition of Tomahawk cruise missiles. Currently, Ukraine can strike targets within a 450-kilometer range. Tomahawks, however, extend that reach to 2,000 kilometers, potentially targeting Moscow, St. Petersburg, and key industrial hubs. This pivotal weapon could shift the conflict's dynamics entirely. Trump is contemplating three potential responses, starting with a freeze on the conflict and solidifying existing front lines. Halting long-range arms shipments. The second scenario involves limited weapon transfers focused on border skirmishes. The most perilous choice entails supplying a full arsenal of missiles with the freedom to strike any target perceived as a threat. Europe remains uninterested in evidence. Instead, they are hunting for justifications. Any missile strike could sow the seeds for new sanctions and escalating tensions. Lukashenko has issued a dire warning: if Ukraine obtains Tomahawks, Kyiv will face inevitable retribution. Meanwhile, the front lines erupt with continued violence. On day 1312 of the conflict, Lukashenko, fresh from discussions with Putin, presses Zelensky to concede to Kremlin demands. Russia reports seizing populated areas, launching airstrikes that obliterate warehouses and military deployment zones in Kherson. Ukraine retaliates with drone strikes, igniting flames in Bryansk, Volgograd, and Chuvashia, as gas stations burn amidst the chaos. What appears to be an unending war reveals both sides' resilience and readiness for prolonged engagement, raising the stakes in an increasingly volatile landscape. The world's attention hangs in suspense. Will these new developments steer the conflict toward an unexpected resolution, or amplify the turmoil? The answer may shape the fate of nations and echo across the globe. What if a single blackout could set off a global conflict? As Belgorod slipped into darkness, its residents lit candles and captured the haunting atmosphere, sharing their stories online. In the midst of this chaos, Ukraine launched strikes that ignited whispers of retaliation. Was this just the beginning of a spiraling confrontation? President Zelensky's ominous assertion that Russia was gearing up for a nationwide blackout in Ukraine loomed large. Was it a hollow threat or an early warning of escalating tensions? In a precarious diplomatic dance, Hungary found itself estranged from Ukraine, caught in a snare of accusations. Tensions flared when Ukraine placed 3 Hungarian officials on a blacklist, a countermeasure against Hungary's ban on Ukrainian military personnel. This tit-for-tat ignited a firestorm, leading Zelensky to charge Hungary with using drones for espionage, a claim vehemently rebuffed by Budapest. Could these missteps fracture diplomatic ties even further? The situation deepened when Hungarian media began to circulate claims that Ukraine was allegedly plotting provocations against its neighbors, Poland and Romania. Reports hinted at Ukraine's covert plans involving retrofitted Russian drones aimed at NATO facilities. Moscow quickly responded, raising alarms about the potential for disastrous consequences. Was this just a narrative spun from thin air, or did it reveal a more sinister reality lurking beneath the surface? As discussions raged on in Brussels, European leaders seemed eager to latch onto any notion that could implicate Moscow, further entangling an already complicated web of accusations. Within this climate of tension, Belgorod became the focal point for military retaliation, its streets swallowed by an eerie silence, broken only by the glow of candlelight. The parallels to past war chronicles sent chills down spines. It became apparent that these strikes were no mere coincidence but a deliberate assertion of power. Zelensky's warning of an impending blackout echoed ominously, reminiscent of last year's assaults on Ukraine's energy grid. This mirrored sequence of aggression, a strike followed by dark threats, reverberated through the media, reinforcing the narrative of fragile alliances. Language became weaponized, each statement charged with urgency and foreboding. Amid this turmoil, attention shifted to Donald Trump's contentious peace plan for Gaza, a proposal that could reshape the political landscape. The idea of the Israeli army's withdrawal paired with technocratic oversight sent shockwaves through the region. How would these developments resonate against a backdrop of escalating tensions? Critics in Israel bemoaned the notion as a form of surrender, fearing a breakdown into internal strife as the stakes soared. What lay ahead for the already fragile balance in the Middle East? Would this plan pave the way for peace or suffocate any hope under the weight of further conflict? As the world braced itself, the looming questions continued to multiply.